What happens when a woman's love turns into a consuming obsession? When the cracks in a seemingly perfect marriage begin to show, will she choose forgiveness or a more sinister path? Caroline and John's love story began like a fairy tale. They were young, in love, and full of dreams. John was everything Caroline ever wanted: intelligent, successful, and incredibly kind. Together, they built a life filled with love, laughter, and shared dreams. Their suburban home was a sanctuary, a place where they could be themselves and find solace in each other's company. Those were simpler times. They were so happy. As John's business continued to grow, he found himself spending more and more time away from home. His work trips became more frequent, and his late nights at the office turned into early mornings. Caroline, initially supportive of his ambitions, began to feel neglected and lonely. Kindly like this video and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to turn on notifications to see our new videos. Despite her efforts to maintain a positive attitude, a sense of unease started to creep into their relationship. Caroline noticed subtle changes in John's behavior. He seemed distracted, less attentive, and less interested in their shared activities. She tried to ignore the growing distance, hoping it was just a temporary phase. One evening, while John was away on a business trip, Caroline stumbled upon a mysterious package addressed to him. Curious, she opened it and found a love letter from another woman. Her heart sank as she read the words filled with affection and longing. The realization that John was cheating on her hit her like a ton of bricks. Caroline felt betrayed and heartbroken. She had always trusted John, and the thought of him with another woman was unbearable. She tried to confront him when he returned home, but he denied the allegations, insisting it was just a misunderstanding. Caroline wasn't convinced. She felt like she was losing the man she loved, and the cracks in their relationship were beginning to show. As time went on, Caroline's suspicions grew stronger. She noticed that John's phone was always locked, and he seemed unusually secretive. She also noticed that he had started spending more time with a particular group of friends, whom she had never met before. One evening, while John was out with his friends, Caroline decided to snoop through his belongings. She found a series of text messages and emails that confirmed her worst fears. John was indeed having an affair. The messages were filled with flirtatious banter and promises of a future together. Caroline felt a wave of anger and betrayal wash over her. She had always been a loyal and devoted wife, and she couldn't understand why John had chosen to betray her trust. She felt like she had been living a lie, and the person she thought she knew was a complete stranger. The realization of John's infidelity shattered Caroline's world. She felt lost, confused, and heartbroken. She couldn't believe that the man she had loved so deeply could have done something so hurtful. The cracks in their relationship had widened beyond repair, and it was clear that their marriage was on the brink of collapse. Caroline's friends were devastated to learn about John's infidelity. They offered her support and encouragement, urging her to leave him. One of her closest friends, Amaka, was particularly concerned. Amaka had always been a loyal and supportive friend to Caroline. She had witnessed the pain and suffering that John's infidelity had caused her, and she was determined to help her move on. Amaka knew that Caroline was a strong woman, but she was also aware of her tendency to hold on to relationships, even when they were toxic. One evening, Amaka sat down with Caroline and had a heart-to-heart conversation. She told Caroline that she deserved better than the emotional turmoil she was going through. She reminded her of the happy, fulfilling life she had before she met John, and she encouraged her to reclaim that life for herself. Amaka urged Caroline to consider the long-term consequences of staying in a relationship with a man who had betrayed her trust. She warned her that the pain and suffering would only continue if she remained with John. Amaka knew that it would be difficult for Caroline to let go, but she believed that it was the only way for her to find true happiness. Caroline was torn between her love for John and her desire to protect herself from further pain. She struggled to make sense of the betrayal, and she was unsure of what to do next. Her friends and family urged her to leave John, but she was hesitant to give up on their marriage. One evening, as Caroline was sitting alone in her living room, she received a text message from John. It was a simple message, saying that he was sorry for what he had done. Caroline's heart raced as she read the message. She had been waiting for an apology, but she was also wary of John's sincerity. Determined to get some closure, Caroline replied to John's message. They arranged to meet at a local coffee shop to talk. The meeting was tense and emotional. John apologized for his infidelity, claiming that it was a mistake and that he still loved Caroline. Caroline listened to John's apologies, but she couldn't shake the feeling that he was just trying to manipulate her. She knew that she deserved better than the emotional turmoil she had been going through. She also knew that she couldn't continue to live in a relationship based on lies and deception. With a heavy heart, Caroline told John that she was leaving him. She explained that she loved him, but she couldn't forgive him for what he had done. John was devastated, but he knew that he had brought this on himself. As Caroline walked away from the coffee shop, she felt a sense of relief and sadness at the same time. She was finally taking control of her life, but she was also grieving the loss of her marriage. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. That's your way of supporting us. Caroline's decision to leave John was a turning point in her life. She felt a mix of relief and sadness as she began to rebuild her life. The initial period after the separation was challenging. She struggled with feelings of loneliness, anger, and self-doubt. It was difficult for her to trust others after being betrayed by the person she loved. Despite the pain, Caroline was determined to move forward. She focused on her career, spent more time with her friends and family, and took up new hobbies. She gradually began to heal, and her confidence slowly returned. John, on the other hand, was devastated by Caroline's departure. He realized the gravity of his actions and regretted the pain he had caused her. He tried to reach out to her several times, but she refused to speak to him. John's infidelity had a profound impact on his life. He lost his reputation, his friends, and his family's respect. He was also forced to face the consequences of his actions in the workplace. His career suffered, and he found himself struggling financially. As time went on, Caroline and John both began to move on with their lives. They learned to cope with the pain of their failed marriage and to find happiness in other areas of their lives. While they never spoke to each other again, they both carried the scars of their relationship with them. As Caroline began to rebuild her life, she was unaware of the dark cloud that was looming over her. Unbeknownst to her, John had been harboring resentment and anger towards her for leaving him. He had been plotting revenge, and he was finally ready to act. One night, while Caroline was asleep in her bed, John broke into her home. He confronted her, accusing her of ruining his life. In a fit of rage, he attacked her, causing serious injuries. Hearing the commotion, neighbors called the police. When the officers arrived, they found Caroline lying on the floor, bleeding heavily. John was still in the house, and he refused to surrender. After a tense standoff, the police were able to subdue him and arrest him. Caroline was rushed to the hospital, where she underwent emergency surgery. She survived the attack, but her injuries were severe. She spent weeks in the hospital recovering from her wounds. The news of Caroline's attack sent shockwaves through the community. People were outraged that someone could commit such a heinous crime. The police launched a thorough investigation into the incident, and John was charged with attempted murder. Caroline's friends and family rallied around her, offering their support and prayers. They were devastated by what had happened, and they were determined to see justice served. The community also came together to raise funds for Caroline's medical expenses. As Caroline recovered from her injuries, she was haunted by the memory of the attack. She struggled to understand why John had done such a terrible thing. She was also filled with fear and anxiety about the future. John's life was forever changed by his attack on Caroline. He was arrested and charged with attempted murder. The trial was highly publicized, and the community was outraged by his actions. John was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. His new reality was one of isolation, regret, and despair. He was confined to a small cell, surrounded by hardened criminals. He was constantly monitored by guards and had limited contact with the outside world. John's family was devastated by his imprisonment. They struggled to come to terms with the fact that their loved one had committed such a horrific crime. They visited him in prison whenever possible, but their conversations were filled with sadness and guilt. John spent his days reflecting on his actions and the pain he had caused Caroline. He was consumed by guilt and remorse, and he wished he could turn back time. He realized that his obsession with revenge had destroyed his life and the lives of others. As the years passed, John's health began to deteriorate. He suffered from chronic illnesses and depression. He was isolated from the world, and he had no hope of ever being released from prison. John's story serves as a cautionary tale about the destructive power of revenge. It is a reminder that violence never solves problems and can only lead to more suffering. The story of Caroline and John is a tragic tale of love, betrayal, and revenge. Their once perfect marriage was shattered by John's infidelity, leading to a chain of events that culminated in violence and imprisonment. Caroline's journey was one of pain, resilience, and survival. She endured the trauma of John's betrayal and the physical and emotional scars of his attack. Despite the challenges she faced, she found the strength to rebuild her life. John's actions had devastating consequences. He lost his freedom, his reputation, and his relationship with Caroline. His life was forever changed by his obsession with revenge. The story of Caroline and John serves as a powerful reminder of the destructive nature of revenge. It is a cautionary tale about the consequences of letting anger and hatred control one's actions. While it is understandable to feel hurt and betrayed, seeking revenge ultimately leads to more pain and suffering. The story also highlights the importance of forgiveness and compassion. By choosing forgiveness, Caroline was able to move on from the pain of her past and find happiness in her life. While it may be difficult to forgive someone who has caused you harm, it can be a powerful act of healing. Ultimately, the price of revenge is too high. It destroys lives, relationships, and communities. It is a path that leads to darkness and despair. Instead of seeking revenge, it is important to focus on healing, forgiveness, and building a better future. Thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one.